and I had grease under my nails I hadn't bothered to scrub out. It was 8:15 in the damn morning, and my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. No name, just unknown caller. I almost let it go. Probably some scam about car warranties or a debt collector trying to find someone else with my last name. But for some reason, I picked up. "This is Cody," I said, expecting silence or a fake Indian accent. Instead, I got a calm, clipped voice. "Hi, Cody. My name is Margaret Stevens. I'm an attorney calling in regard to your grandfather's estate. A Mr. Clyde Rourke." I paused. "Who?" "Clyde Rourke," she repeated. "Your grandfather. He passed recently. I'm handling the estate." My stomach dropped a little, but mostly I was confused. I hadn't seen Grandpa Clyde since I was maybe 9. Last I'd heard, he didn't want anything to do with me. That's what my stepmom Brenda always said, that after the divorce and everything, Clyde wrote us off. I didn't even know he was still alive until now. "You sure you got the right Cody?" I asked. "My dad's name is David, but I don't think Clyde—" "He specifically named you," Margaret cut in. "I understand this is unexpected, but it's important that we meet today. There's paperwork you need to review and a letter that was left for you." I looked back at the bay doors. Tommy was already waving at me to get inside. I turned away from him. "You mean like a will?" "Yes. It's urgent we go over the contents as soon as possible. Can you come to my office around 10:30? Quick note. Before listening, share in the comments which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a cold conference room downtown, still in my shop uniform, sweat dried on my neck. Across the table, Margaret Stevens laid out a set of documents and slid a sealed envelope across to me. The handwriting was shaky, but I recognized the name, Clyde Rourke. The will was simple but shocking. He left me $2.3 million, a log cabin up near Spirit Lake, 3 investment accounts, and that letter. I just sat there trying to process what the hell was happening. For over a decade, I'd believed the man didn't care if I lived or died. Now I was holding a letter with my name on it in his handwriting. And apparently, I was his only heir. I opened the envelope with both hands, fingers stiff like they didn't trust what was inside. The paper was thick, yellowed a little, like it had been waiting a long time. The handwriting was hard to read at first, Grandpa's pen dragged in places, but once I started, I couldn't stop. "Cody, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and I finally found a way to get the truth to you." That first sentence hit me harder than the will. The rest just cut deeper. He laid it all out. Said he was my real grandfather, Rachel's father, and that Rachel was my biological mom. That I wasn't adopted. That I wasn't some random kid Dad had taken in after his first wife bailed. Rachel didn't leave me. She died in a car crash when I was 3. And 6 months later, Dad married Brenda. Quick and quiet. According to Clyde, Brenda made it clear from day one that she didn't want me around. She told people I was Rachel's mistake, like I was some dirty secret. She pushed Dad to tell family I was adopted, not really his. That's how Clyde got cut out. He found out they'd changed the story and stopped bringing me around. I dropped the letter on the table and leaned back, heart pounding. "You're telling me this woman convinced my dad to pretend I wasn't his kid?" I asked Margaret, my voice louder than I meant it to be. She nodded slowly. "Your grandfather tried to fight it. There were letters, calls. He even hired a lawyer at one point. But then your dad and Brenda moved counties, changed schools. Clyde couldn't find you. He just gave up? He hired someone." Margaret opened a red folder and slid it over. Inside were photographs, some grainy, some clear. Me, in a hoodie, waiting for the city bus. Me, carrying a sack of groceries in one hand and a laundry bag in the other. Me, working at the garage late at night. Me eating from a lunchbox on a park bench. All of it real, all of it mine, but it felt like someone else's life being played back to me. "I didn't even know anyone saw me," I muttered. "I thought I was just background noise." Margaret sat down across from me again. Clyde paid a private investigator to keep tabs on you. He didn't want to cause trouble, but he also didn't want to lose you completely. I flipped through more of the photos. There were notes clipped to the back of some. Addresses. Dates. One just said, "Still working weekends plus school nights." "This one's from 3 years ago," I said, holding it up. "That was when I was living in that converted garage. No insulation, no heat. You could see your breath in the winter. I was boiling eggs on a hot plate for dinner." Margaret nodded like she'd heard it before. "He knew. He read the reports. That's why he made the will the way he did." For a second I couldn't breathe. Not because of the money, but because this man I was told didn't want me, had been watching out for me while the people in my own house acted like I didn't exist. Dad used to say I was lucky to have a roof over my head. Brenda once told me I should be grateful I wasn't dumped in foster care. Meanwhile, they treated Trent like he was royalty. New sneakers every month, birthday parties with bounce houses. He got a car on his 16th birthday. I wasn't allowed to touch the keys. They told everyone he was the future of the family. I was just the extra mouth. "You know what Brenda told me when I was 12? I said, staring at one of the photos. She said, "Don't expect much, Cody. You're not blood." I believed her. I didn't realize my hands were shaking until Margaret slid a tissue box across the table. I didn't take one. I believed I was just this charity case. Like they were doing me a favor by feeding me. Like I should be grateful for leftovers and hand-me-downs while they gave Trent everything. Margaret didn't interrupt. She let it sit. I thought my mom left me. I thought I wasn't good enough. All this time, I hated her for it. "Your mother loved you," she said. "Clyde made that very clear. He said she held you every single night until the accident." I pressed my hands against my face, trying to stop the heat rising up behind my eyes. I didn't want to cry in front of some lawyer. But something in my chest cracked open, and I didn't know how to close it again. It wasn't just a lie. It was a whole life I'd lived based on that lie. A stolen childhood, stolen memories, stolen family. And now, the truth was laid out in black and white, right there in Clyde's damn handwriting, with photos and reports to back it all up. "They erased me," I said quietly, and he remembered everything. Margaret gave a small nod, like that was the part Clyde hoped I'd understand the most. Margaret slid another folder across the table, thinner than the one with the photos, but heavier in a different way. She didn't say anything this time, just looked at me like she was waiting for me to be ready. I wasn't. But I opened it anyway. Inside were more reports, more paper trails, bank records, credit statements, expense summaries. Most of it wasn't mine. It was all about my dad, Brenda, and Trent. He let them believe they were getting everything, Margaret said, for years. "What do you mean?" I asked, flipping through the pages. "Your grandfather told them the estate would be split evenly among the grandkids. That's what they were counting on." I stared at one printout. My dad had taken out a loan to buy a brand new F-250 Super Duty, $78,000 fully loaded. I remembered seeing the truck on Facebook, him standing next to it like he just closed a land deal. Brenda had posted something like, "Hard work pays off." The comments were full of fire emojis and "You deserve it." "You're saying he bought that thinking Grandpa was going to foot the bill?" Margaret nodded. "The truck, the kitchen remodel, the bathroom redo, even Trent's ATV rig, it's all here." I kept flipping. I kept tens of thousands on credit cards, Best Buy, Lowe's, Capital One, Chase, flight receipts to San Diego, hotel bookings in Cancun. Facebook didn't show the payments though, just Brenda in a sun hat with a cocktail and captions like "Paradise with my boys." I sat back and let out a low laugh that didn't feel good. They were spending money they didn't even have yet. They were spending money that was never theirs, she said. My throat tightened. I thought about that year I worked 2 jobs just to keep my studio apartment with the warped floorboards and a busted water heater. Thought about the time I walked 2 miles in the rain because I couldn't afford gas and the bus fare in the same week. Meanwhile, Trent was posting videos on his ATV, tearing through dirt trails in a full GoPro helmet setup. "Let me guess," I said. "How much do they get?" Margaret reached for another envelope and tapped it twice before opening. "David Rourke is written out of the will entirely. Trent and Brenda each receive $5,000. I stared at her. "That's it?" "That's it." Jesus Christ. $5,000 won't even cover their minimum payments. "It was intentional," she said, firm and calm. "Clyde wanted them to feel it, not just lose what they thought they had, but realize how far they'd fallen for it." I shook my head, brain buzzing. "And they have no idea?" "No," she said. "Not yet. They believe they're about to cash out." I could picture it clear as day. Brenda probably already picked out granite for the upstairs bath. Dad probably put a down payment on something else, thinking the checks would cover it. And Trent. Hell, he probably thought he'd be set for life. All of them bought into this idea that the inheritance was theirs, like it was owed to them. And none of them thought for 1 second that maybe, just maybe, Grandpa Clyde saw through all their bullshit. I looked down at the pages again. Dad's signature on a credit application. Brenda's name on a renovation contract. I flipped to the photo of Trent sitting on his $40,000 four-wheeler, holding a Red Bull, captioned "Blessed." "I worked 50, 60 hours a week," I said. Still had to study HVAC at night. I fell asleep in class more than once. Margaret leaned forward. "Your grandfather knew. He saw your schedule. He saw the jobs. He saw you." That's the part that broke me all over again. Not the money. Not even the lies. Just knowing that someone had been watching and actually gave a damn while I was out there thinking I didn't matter to anybody. "And Rachel," I said, the name still strange in my mouth. "She really died? She didn't leave me?" "She died in a car crash. You were 3. Clyde was devastated. He said your dad remarried before the funeral flowers even wilted." I closed the folder. My hands were sweaty, my head pounding. "So he just let them lie?" "Not exactly," she said. "He tried to fight them early on, but they shut him out. So he played the long game. He let them believe what they wanted to believe. Then he set the trap." My jaw clenched. I wasn't sure if I was furious or just wrecked inside. Probably both. The kind of anger that simmers right under your skin because there's nowhere else for it to go. "I lived 20 years thinking I was nothing," I said. "Thinking my mom dumped me. Thinking my grandpa didn't care. Thinking my dad was doing me a damn favor by keeping me under his roof." Margaret stood. "Well, none of that was true, and now you've got the proof." I stood too, still gripping the folder like it might disappear if I let it go. "They're not going to take this well," I said. "No, they won't." I stared out the window. Downtown Spokane looked gray and indifferent. Life going on like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Margaret tapped her pen on the table, slow and steady, then looked at me like she was waiting for the last piece to click. "He wanted me there when you told them," she said. "To witness it. To make sure they heard every word." I didn't argue. I didn't want to go alone anyway. We drove across town in her silver sedan. Quiet most of the ride. I stared out the window, trying to brace for the storm. My palms wouldn't stop sweating. Her GPS called out the turns until we pulled into their neighborhood. Gated community, rows of perfectly trimmed lawns, kids riding scooters on sidewalks. Their house was near the end of the street. 2 stories, fresh paint, big yard. New concrete poured on the driveway. Looked like something off a damn brochure. I hadn't been here in over a year. Margaret stepped out in heels and a tailored blazer. I followed, still in my work boots and a flannel with motor oil on the sleeve. We walked up the porch steps, and I hit the doorbell before I could think too hard. Brenda opened the door with a glass of wine in her hand, and a face full of suspicion. Her eyes flicked from me to Margaret, and before either of us could speak, she rolled her eyes. "Let me guess, here to beg for money again?" she said. I didn't blink. "I'm here about Grandpa Clyde's will." That stopped her. She glanced at Margaret, suddenly alert. "Who's this?" "I'm Margaret Stevens," she said calmly. "I represent the estate of Clyde Rourke. May we come in?" Brenda stepped aside without a word. Inside, it smelled like expensive candles and lemon polish. Dad was slouched in the recliner, eyes glued to ESPN. Trent was on the couch, headset on, PlayStation controller in his hand, yelling into his mic. "Trent!" Brenda snapped. "Turn that off! We've got company!" He grunted and kept playing. Margaret took a step forward. "Thank you for having us. I'm here regarding the final execution of Clyde Rourke's estate." Dad muted the TV and sat up. "Finally. I was wondering when someone would get in touch. We were expecting this weeks ago." "You're not the only one," Brenda added, suddenly in hostess mode. "I mean, we were close with Clyde. Family. He'd want us taken care of." Margaret looked straight at me, then back at them. "Actually, I'm here for Cody." The room shifted. Dad squinted. Brenda blinked. "What?" Dad said, his voice flat. "This meeting is for Cody," Margaret repeated. "He is the sole beneficiary of Mr. Rourke's estate." Brenda let out a laugh like she misheard. "What are you talking about?" Margaret opened her folder and pulled out a few pages. Clyde Rourke's final will and testament names Cody Rourke as the sole heir. All assets, property, financial accounts, investments, have been legally transferred to him. Dad stood up slowly. "There must be a mistake. Cody was adopted. He wasn't even Rachel's real kid." Brenda jumped in fast. "Yeah, he's just some stray Rachel brought back from God knows where. Clyde would never leave everything to him." I pulled the envelope from my back pocket and opened it. "You want the truth?" I said. "Here." I unfolded the letter and read it right there in the living room. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. "Cody, you are my grandson. Rachel was your mother. She didn't leave you. She died. Brenda fought to erase you from this family, and I was shut out trying to stop it." I looked up at them. Brenda was frozen. Dad's face had gone pale. Trent finally looked up from his game, blinking like he was just now realizing this wasn't about him. "You lied to me my whole life," I said. "Told people I was adopted. Told me I was lucky to even be here. Meanwhile, you treated Trent like he was the damn Messiah." Brenda's face twisted. "This is manipulation. That old man didn't know what he was doing. You took advantage of him." "Clyde had 2 psychiatric evaluations before signing the will," Margaret cut in, voice like steel. "He was of sound mind. The will was witnessed by 6 people, notarized, and backed by video. Your opinion isn't legally relevant." Dad finally spoke, but his voice was small. "He never told me Rachel had a kid." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "You signed the birth certificate." He looked at the floor. I stared at both of them. "You kept me in the dark for 20 years, had me thinking I was some mistake, that my real mom ditched me." Brenda stepped forward, shaking now. "We raised you. We put food on your plate." "No," I said, cutting her off. "You tolerated me. You fed me like you feed a stray cat, just enough to keep it quiet." Brenda's wine glass was shaking in her hand. "You were never meant to be part of this family." "Well, I am now," I said. "Legally, financially, bloodline. All of it." Trent stood up. "Wait, so what do we get?" Margaret looked right at him. $5,000. Each Trent's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I folded the letter and tucked it back into my pocket. "Grandpa wanted you to hear it, from me, with a witness. So there's no more pretending." Brenda started to speak again, but I was already walking toward the door. Margaret followed. I didn't look back. Before I reached the porch steps, Trent's voice shot out behind me. Wait, hold on. That's it? $5,000? That's all I get?" I stopped. Margaret paused beside me. I turned back just in time to see him stomp forward like a spoiled kid who just found out Christmas got canceled. "What about the cabin?" he demanded. "What about the stocks and all the bank accounts?" Margaret's tone didn't change. "All of it goes to Cody." "You gotta be kidding me," he snapped. "I'm his grandson too." "No," I said, stepping back inside. You're Brenda's son. I'm Rachel's. That makes me Clyde's actual blood. You're just the bonus child who got everything handed to him and still expected more. Brenda came in next, eyes blazing. This is a scam. You manipulated that old man when he was vulnerable. You got in his head somehow. That's enough, Margaret said, raising her voice for the first time. Mr. Rourke's will was drafted 3 years ago. He reviewed it every 6 months until the day he died. It was signed and notarized in front of 6 legal witnesses. He passed 2 separate psychiatric evaluations confirming full mental capacity. Brenda wasn't hearing any of it. This is fraud. He didn't mean it. He wouldn't do this to us. Then you didn't know him at all, I said. You thought he was going to reward you after you spent 20 years lying about me. He watched all of it. Every time you bragged about a new vacation or the truck or that stupid ATV, he saw it. Dad stepped forward finally, voice low and shaky. You poisoned him against us. No, I said. You did that all on your own. He went quiet. I stepped into the center of the living room, pulled out the folded summary Margaret gave me, and dropped it on the table. You want to know how deep you screwed yourselves? Brenda stared like she wanted to slap me. You spent over $200,000 in the last 3 years thinking you were going to get a golden check. That truck out there still has a lien on it. The remodels, all credit. Cancun, maxed your Amex. Trent looked between them. Wait, what? Brenda turned red. This isn't the time. I ignored her. Meanwhile, I was living in a converted garage, had a hot plate for a stove. I boiled eggs for dinner because that's all I could afford some weeks. You don't get to throw that in our face, Dad muttered. The hell I don't, I said sharp. I lived like garbage while you played house with Clyde's money before you even had it. You walked around like it was owed to you, like it was never in question. And you all thought I was just some adopted ghost who wouldn't be part of it. Brenda pointed at Margaret, voice cracking. You're going to court. I'll sue. I'll get every dollar you're hiding. Margaret smiled without warmth. The will has already gone through probate. Assets transferred, accounts locked and secured. You're welcome to call a lawyer, but I promise you, you'll lose. Trent slammed his hand on the back of the couch. This is insane. Grandpa was fine with me. He liked me. He tolerated you, I shot back. Same way you all tolerated me. But he never forgot who his daughter was, and he never forgot who tried to erase her. Brenda stared at me, hands trembling. But we raised you. I laughed, short and cold. Number you tolerated me. That's the difference. Her jaw clenched like she was about to spit something nasty, but nothing came. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not meaner, just cornered. The rage wasn't working anymore. The manipulation wasn't landing. I looked at my dad, the man I used to believe was just doing his best. You let her bury Rachel's name. You let her tell people I wasn't even yours. And you let me believe it. He didn't respond. He just stared at the floor like he couldn't even meet his own reflection anymore. I used to wish I'd been adopted, I added, voice dropping. Would have made more sense. At least then I'd have an excuse for why I didn't belong here. The room went still. You could feel the shift, like something hollow finally collapsed under its own weight. I turned to Margaret. We done? She gave a single nod. We're done. We walked out, the door clicking shut behind us, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the outsider. They were the ones left behind now. Margaret dropped me off at my truck, didn't say much on the way. I think she knew I needed the silence. I just sat behind the wheel for a minute before starting it up, hands gripping the steering wheel like it might steady me. 6 months later, I was standing on the porch of Clyde's cabin. It sat tucked into the edge of town, past the old mill road, surrounded by tall pine trees that swayed even when the wind was dead. The wood siding was weathered but strong. The porch creaked in the right places. The roof needed some work, but it didn't leak. It felt still, like everything was finally done spinning. The first night I slept there, I didn't turn on a TV. I didn't need noise. For the first time in my life, the quiet didn't feel like a punishment. I spent the first week cleaning out closets and cupboards. Clyde had kept things simple. Tools, fishing gear, a drawer full of receipts and old batteries. But the attic, that's where the ghosts lived. It was cramped and dusty, with insulation that scratched my arms and dead spiders in the corners. But in the far end, under a slanted beam, I found a trunk. Real old-school-looking thing with rusted hinges and leather straps that had dry rotted. It took some elbow grease, but I got it open. Inside were photo albums. Not digital scans, not screenshots, real prints. Dozens of them, all sorted in neat stacks, some still in envelopes from the drugstore where they were developed. I started flipping through. There I was, me, barely walking, wobbling around on thick carpet. A woman crouched next to me, smiling at the camera like I was the sun itself. Rachel. Her hair pulled back in a scrunchie, face young and tired but happy. There were birthdays I didn't remember, one with a paper crown on my head and a candle and a cupcake. There was Christmas, me opening a Tonka truck with Clyde kneeling beside me, grinning like he won the lottery. I sat back against the beam, holding the album like it might fall apart. None of those memories lived in my brain, but they were proof I had a place once. I wasn't some last-minute charity case. I wasn't an outsider. I was wanted, loved, celebrated. Behind the albums were letters, dozens, all in envelopes addressed to me, never opened. I grabbed one at random. Cody, age 10. Inside was a birthday letter from Clyde, handwritten, steady, and clear. I bet you're growing like a weed. I miss you more than you'll ever know. If I could be there, I would. Just know I'm proud of you, no matter what. I read 6 of them before I had to stop. My throat was tight and my chest felt like it had been hollowed out with a shovel. At the bottom of the trunk were returned Christmas cards, each still sealed, stamped with big red letters, RTS, Return to Sender. Most were addressed to the house I grew up in. My house. Brenda had been sending them back all these years. Quiet, petty, complete erasure. I pulled one out, a red envelope with glitter still stuck to the corner. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I knew what was inside. Just another reminder that someone out there cared, and someone else made sure I never saw it. By the time I closed the trunk, the attic was dim and cold. I carried the best photo down with me, Rachel holding me as a baby, her chin resting on the top of my head, her eyes looking straight into mine like she knew the future was going to try and steal us apart. I framed it the next day and hung it in the living room above the couch. Every morning after that, I made my coffee and sat across from that picture. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. It just felt right, like I finally had someone in the room who wasn't lying to me. The cabin wasn't fancy. It still had the original kitchen tile, and the fireplace smoked a little if you didn't stack the wood just right. But it was mine. And not because of paperwork or signatures. It was mine because it was filled with proof that I mattered to someone. Some nights I'd sit on the porch and listen to the wind move through the trees. Other nights I'd flip through the letters, one by one, like I was catching up on all the birthdays and milestones I'd missed. Clyde wrote about fishing, about hope, about how proud he was even when he couldn't be there. He talked about Rachel like she was still in the next room, not gone for over 20 years. I didn't cry much anymore. I didn't have to. The grief wasn't sharp like it used to be. It was quieter now, like an echo. Still there, still real, but not running the show. That cabin gave me more peace than anything else ever had. Even if they were gone, for the first time in my life I felt like I had a real family. I hung the last inspection certificate on the wall next to my desk and took a deep breath. Rourke Mechanical was official, state licensed, bonded, insured, all of it. The logo was on the truck, my name was on the lease, and my toolbox sat exactly where it belonged, ready for the next call. The cabin's garage had just enough space for a small workshop, and that's where I started. Used a chunk of the inheritance to buy decent gear, a used service van, and pay off my certification program. The rest, I kept tucked away. Not for retirement, not for splurging, just for security, for peace. By month 3, I had regulars, people who called me back because I showed up on time and didn't talk down to them. Word got around. When the first winter hit and everyone's heat started failing, I barely had time to sleep. But I didn't mind. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. Along the way, I started noticing something that hit me harder than I expected. How many young guys I worked around looked like they were hanging on by a thread. Some were barely out of foster care, couch surfing, trying to keep jobs with no tools, no help, no clue how to stand on solid ground. They reminded me of who I'd been, so I started something on the side. Nothing fancy, just a little nonprofit project I called Rachel's Hands, named after the woman who'd held me in that photo, the one who never got the chance to raise me. I found a few guys through trade schools and youth shelters, paid for their books or tools, helped them get interviews. Sometimes it was just rides to job sites. Sometimes it was teaching them how to read a floor plan or change a filter without busting the coils. It felt like giving back. Yeah, but more than that, it felt like pushing back against the lie that some people are disposable. I knew what it felt like to be the kid no one wanted. I wasn't going to let them carry that weight alone. Christmas rolled around, and the mailbox out by the road started getting crowded again. Not with bills, with cards. Brenda sent one every year now. The first one said something about forgiveness and family ties. The second one had a photo of a fake tree and a handwritten note about rebuilding what was lost. I didn't open them, didn't even tear them up. I just tossed them into the fireplace, envelope and all, let the smoke take care of it. She had 20 years to send birthday cards. She used that time to send rejection slips instead. Dad called once, just once. I was fixing a broken fan belt in someone's attic when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number until I heard his voice. "Hey, Cody, it's your dad. Look, I was wondering if maybe you could help out a little. The mortgage has been rough since, well, just something to hold us over." I let him talk. Didn't interrupt. When he was done, I said, "You'll want to contact Margaret. She's still handling all the legal stuff." There was a long pause. He said, "Right. Okay," and hung up. Never heard from him again. Last I checked, Trent sold his precious ATV. Posted it online for way less than it was worth. Had to dump it fast to catch up on some payments. Brenda picked up a part-time job at the local hospital. Word got around their credit was trashed, multiple cards maxed out, a repossession in the works. They'd spent like royalty on a future that was never theirs. Me? I didn't need much. Just quiet mornings, strong coffee, and a damn good socket set. I had my van. I had my license. I had work that made sense and people who respected what I did with my hands. And I slept. Really slept. Not the kind of restless, guilt-filled half-sleep I used to get in that freezing garage apartment. Now I'd crash hard and wake up rested, not haunted. Sometimes I'd get home late, park under the stars, and just sit for a second, hand on the steering wheel, listening to the wind in the trees and the creak of the porch wood settling with the night air. The kind of peace money can't buy, but truth builds. I didn't care about revenge anymore. That part burned out. What I had now wasn't about getting even. It was about starting over without dragging their damage with me. They could keep their fake apologies, their sudden interest in healing. I had a home, I had a name, and I had the truth. It had been exactly 1 year since Margaret handed me that envelope in her office, eyes calm like she already knew what it would do to me. 1 year since my world cracked open and I realized I hadn't been thrown away. I'd been stolen from, lied to, covered up like a stain no one wanted to claim. Now, most nights, I ended the day the same way. On the porch with a mug in my hand, and Grandpa Clyde's letters spread across my lap like they were scripture. Some were just stories. Him talking about fishing or the neighbor's annoying dog. Others gutted me. Stuff like I wonder if you still have that dimple when you smile, or Rachel would have loved to see you now. Sometimes I'd laugh out loud. Other times I'd sit there, fists clenched, heart tight, because every word reminded me I was seen, even when I'd felt like a shadow in my own house. He remembered everything. The birthdays. My favorite toy when I was 4. The scar on my chin from falling off the porch. None of it was forgotten. That's what saved me. Sure, the money changed my life. I'm not dumb enough to pretend otherwise. It gave me a way out. A chance to start from solid ground for once. But the money didn't fix the damage. The truth did. The truth that I was Rachel's son, that she didn't leave me, that Grandpa Clyde never gave up on me, that they tried to erase me but failed. That's what healed me. I didn't hate my dad anymore. Hate takes energy, and he didn't deserve any more of mine. I just didn't respect him. A man who lets his wife rewrite his child's story isn't a man at all. And Brenda, let's just say if I ever saw her boots on fire, I wouldn't waste the spit. They got what they earned. They lived off promises that were never theirs, built their future on a lie, and couldn't believe it when the ground gave out. I still remember the look on Trent's face, like someone snatched the golden ticket right out of his hand. He'd been raised to think the world was his for the taking. Guess that ended the moment the truth walked through their front door wearing work boots. But me? I wake up in a house built on real love. Real sacrifice. The kind you can't fake on paper. It smells like pine and old books and something settled. Funny how you can lose everything you thought you had, family, childhood, your place in the world, and somehow end up with more than you ever imagined. A name, a history, a real sense of who you are and where you came from. I never got to tell Clyde thank you. Never got to sit across from him, shake his hand, or take him fishing. That part still stings. But every time I help someone from Rachel's hands get their first job, or give a kid their first real tool belt, I figure maybe I'm saying it in my own way. So now I just live in a way that would have made him proud. Would you have forgiven your father, or shut the door like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story hit you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.